Do you know why bad cholesterol is displayed in quotes in Wikipedia? Because it doesn't really exist. It's a nickname, a shorthand. That's what Terry Pratchett called lies for children. A simplification good enough for the general public, but not good enough for us if you want to live to be 100 years old by design. An even more interesting story happens with saturated fat. And saturated fat recommendations, maybe you saw them in the RFK's latest dietary guidelines. And the idea of this video actually came into my head when I was reading it. Because those 10% they recommend, they're kind of wonky and are extremely easy to blow. Unless you pay close attention to the types of saturated fats. Because unlike cholesterol, there is no single saturated fat. And there are good saturated fats and bad saturated fats when it comes to your heart. So let's level up from children to young and healthy adults. That kind of level. What does it mean? Let's say you want to explain navigation and tides to a simple fisherman. You can tell him about the moon and how it circles around the earth, dragging the water along. But if you want to send a rocket to the moon, and if you treat moon's orbit as a circle, you're going to miss it by 30,000 miles because the moon's orbit is not quite a circle. It's an ellipse. Bad cholesterol story is just like that if you are aiming above the average life. And saturated fat, T singular, is also like that. And to make smart everyday shopping decisions, we need to get off the ground. But to fully understand fats and their dichotomy, we need to fix the non-existent bad cholesterol first. Because by itself, cholesterol is not good or bad. It's assault vehicles cholesterol is driving around, which is a real problem. And the vehicles, are called bad cholesterol. But there is a problem with that. It's a very rough estimate. Bad cholesterol is a nickname for something you probably see on your blood test every year, LDL, low density lipoprotein. And you can think about it as lipo being cholesterol and everything else around is like a vehicle, like a truck, which carries that cholesterol around. But you see, if a truck, let's say, crashes into your house, it doesn't matter if it's just one driver there and the rest is empty, or it's a driver with 5 bodies. The damage to the house is exactly the same. Historically, doctors were focusing on the drivers and passengers in the truck. The concentration of cholesterol, that's what LDL test represents. But since the early 2000s, we know that it's the vehicles, the trucks, which create the damage. And if you just count the number of vehicles in your arteries, it's significantly more accurate than cholesterol, than particle sizes, and all those crazy ratios. And for that we have one simple test called ApoB. That's what you should always be asking your doctor to add to the lipid panel to get much more accurate picture. Okay, now that you have this mental model, it's not the cargo, it's number of trucks, the game is pretty simple. Get the trucks off the road. I have a very detailed dive into that, which you can watch later. But today I'd like to focus on saturated fats, especially 2 most common ones called C16 and C18, because they're both saturated fats, but with completely different effect on your cholesterol tracks. Your liver is essentially a giant parking lot, parking garage for cholesterol. And it has special gates called LDL receptors. When these gates are open, the trucks drive into the liver and get off the roads. Life is good. Until what we can call, to stick with the tradition, bad saturated fat, which is palmitic acid, C16, drives in. And by the way, this is a fat found in palm oil and high-fat dairy and grain-fed meat. When you eat it, it gets into the liver and locks the gates behind itself, suppresses LDL receptor. And as a result, the trucks have nowhere to go, so they pile up in your blood and ApoB goes up. That's why we have that limitation on saturated fats in the guidelines in the first place. But we also have a good, or at least neutral, saturated fat, stearic acid, C18, which doesn't touch the gates and leaves them open. The trucks keep flowing in and ApoB doesn't change much. So whenever you shop, you can look at the labels, and if you see palm oil mentioned there, just skip or look for alternatives. For example, Nutella with dark chocolate spread. The first is loaded with palm oil and raises ApoB quite a lot. The second is pretty much neutral. That's a fun fact about dark chocolate. It has enough polyphenols to offset the bad saturated fat, and you only pay in calories and maybe heavy metals. So it's another reminder to keep your methylation and detox ticking. Next, cooking fats. If you are, let's say, roasting vegetables or searing a steak and don't like olive oil for some reason, then tallow has much better fat profile than butter for the same reason. It has more of that neutral stearic acid. And speaking about the steak itself, meat from grain-fed cows tends to accumulate bad palmitic fatty acid, but grass-fed accumulates stearic, the good one. But Alex, you say, I'm broke, I don't have money for grass-fed steaks. Well, so am I. I only get them for special occasions. Otherwise, it's lentils time, which is protein, fiber, cholesterol down, and small fish or salmon. But mercury, pollutants, and microplastic, well, here's what sane biohackers and doctors do every day to deal with that. Living smart